We can?
Good morning, Zion Church.
Good morning.
Wonderful to see you all here today. How's everybody doing?
Very well, thank you.
We're here.
Yes,
That's right.
we're
Here is good.
yeah.
Today has been set aside by the Central Atlantic Conference as Faith and Democracy Sunday. We're going to see a video in a couple of minutes that will tell us a little bit more about it. But as we get closer and closer, not just towards Election Sunday, but towards the day when we start making decisions about who we are and what it is that we want, not just from our country, but from our world. I want to remind you of something that the Reverend Dr. William J. Barber Jr. once said. He said, "Did you know that in the Bible, the word for vote and the word for voice are the same word?" I'm telling you that because I didn't know that. And he went on to say, we need to use our vote and let God speak through our votes. So today, I'm reminding you of this because it doesn't matter as much to me who you vote for, but that you're intentional in how you vote, and that you use the right and the privilege to vote in just a few weeks. And that when you vote, you remember the words that the prophet Micah has sent to us. When he said to God, "What is it that you require of me?" And God said, "To do justice, to show mercy, and to always walk humbly with our God." And no matter how you vote, from the presidential all the way to the local elections, our vote should reflect those components. Now, on to our announcements. We have some happy and joyous news, but I'm going to hold on to that because you're going to see it in just a moment. But we have some other good news. We are finally moving forward in some positive ways. Soup Kitchen is opening back up on October 6th.
Great.
Good.
Great.
We are going to open up for seating inside the fellowship hall.
Wonderful.
So we're going to have it socially distanced. So it will not be people sitting quite as close together. Everybody will have to be masked. And we will hopefully have enough people to cover all the shifts. But if you are interested in volunteering or helping out in any way, please let me or Carol Morris know. Because we are starting to pull all of that together right now. It is going to take a little bit more planning to make sure that we can provide this very important ministry in a safe way. But as we know, the need out there is great. And we need to make sure that we are providing for the people who are in need in our community. And because the need is so great, we are also going to have a Harvest Home Sunday on October 18th, where people can donate non-perishable goods to go to the food bank. Food banks, not just in this area, but all over the country, are getting depleted because there is such a great need because of the unemployment rates being so high, our poverty rates are skyrocketing, and people just don't have enough food. And now that we're getting closer to the holidays, it's getting colder, we need to make sure that we're doing our part. So this is going to be the first part of what we're going to make as a monthly endeavor. So we're gonna ask everybody to bring whatever you have. And if you can't bring something, if you want to just do a cash donation, somebody can go and shop for you later. Whatever you bring, we're going to bless it that day, and then we're going to send it out to those people who need it the most. Are there any other announcements? You all are so quiet.
That's the church right here, yeah.
Okay, as I look at you, I'm so happy to see all of you masked. But as I walked around earlier today, I had to scold just a few people about putting their masks back on. I know it's hard. I know it's hard. And I know it feels like we've been doing this forever. But we want to get to the other side of this. We want to get to a place where we are safe. And where we can worship safely together in the ways that we're used to. So I'm going to ask all of you to continue to follow the safety procedures that Barb and I have put together. Along with Bernie and Carol, we were our task force that made it possible for people to come back in here. We're going to be able to stay in here. We got to make sure people are safe and healthy. We already had one person get sick and she's standing right in front of you. We don't want anybody else getting sick. And we don't want to close our doors again. So let's all do our part. And please don't make me the church now. It's already. I'm already nagging my own house. I don't need to be nagging. So you'll have to help me nag so I don't have to carry the burden alone. Or better yet, wear your mask. And then I won't have to say anything. Okay, one last call. Any other announcements, joys, or concerns? Then let us continue on with our time of worship, knowing that this is the day that God has made. So let us be glad and rejoice in it.
Amen. Amen.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, how sweet.
I told you we had good news.
Yes, this is wonderful. Who's this?
We have just an abundance of babies. How wonderful is that?
Yeah, that is great.
This is Sherry and Ralph Sellers' new great-grandson.
Number 6.
Ah! Ooh.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And it is spelled wrong. I just found out. That is H-A-D. But then the whole
Hayden.
family said. I talked to the grandmother.
Hayden.
Fellow Central Atlantic Conference, my name is Reverend Marvin Silver, and I serve as your Associate Conference Minister for Justice and Witness Ministries.
Hi, my name is Reverend Terry Osimo-Gawa, and I serve as your campaign organizer for the Faith and Democracy campaign of the Justice and Witness Action Network.
In March, the network launched the Faith and Democracy 2020 campaign. This nonpartisan campaign is a critical justice ministry and civic engagement, including voter registration, the 2020 census, voter education and empowerment, and get out the vote. Local churches and clergy can and should engage in the democratic process of our nation and support the general public's participation as well. Federal election law states that religious organizations are prohibited from partisan political activity. This means supporting or opposing any candidate for public office. But it doesn't prohibit nonpartisan political activity, especially supporting the general public's participation in elections. The central organizing principle of this campaign is that every person has a right and opportunity to vote, and to participate in the 2020 census without fear, intimidation, limitations, and false information. Our vote and participation in the 2020 census serve as powerful tools to rid our communities of injustice, racism, and inequity.
Now that the primary election season is over, the campaign is shifting its focus to the upcoming general election on November 3rd. Thank you to the 45 local churches and more than 140 justice leaders and clergy who are engaged in this campaign and who have sent out close to 10,000 postcards to low voter turnout communities. We are launching 4 campaign strategic initiatives this fall that we'd like to share with you.
First, visit the Faith and Democracy 2020 Election Center at letjustice.org and pledge to vote now. Then check your voter registration status, make a plan to vote, create a second ballot, and you can register to vote. Second, empower voters, address voter suppression, and get out the vote in low voter turnout communities in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, and Texas. You will be trained to contact voters via phone, bank, and text.
Third, we will highlight the prophetic voices of leaders across the conference on state and national issues important in this election year. Share the videos and testimonies posted at letjustice.org. And fourth, get out the count. The deadline to be counted in the 2020 census was moved up to September 30th from October 31st. This has the potential to suppress low-income and people of color counts. Go to 2020census.gov now and fill out the survey. It takes just a few minutes to complete.
The outcome of the general elections and the 2020 census will determine the trajectory of our country for a decade or more. There is no better time than now. Led by our faith, focused on freedom, and energized by love, let's make a seismic shift toward justice and true democracy at this moment in our nation's history. Our faith in democracy requires active participation. We hope you will join us. God bless.
And I invite you to please rise as you are able for our call to worship. God is here.
God loves each of us without measure and welcomes us to every race, color, creed, language, culture, and orientation.
God who sees us and knows us all.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Let all the people praise God.
Let us pray. Gracious and compassionate Creator, we are gathered to worship you.
You are great and worthy of all praise.
We quiet our hearts and minds so we may hear and respond to your voice.
You are great and worthy of all praise.
Christ of our hearts, be enlivened in and among us.
You are great and worthy of all praise.
Live through us as doers of justice, lovers of mercy, and as those who walk humbly with you.
You are great and worthy of all praise.
This, so we may become the beloved community where all may live with dignity and in peace.
Because you are great and worthy of all praise. Amen.
From prophets of old to modern day prophets, we are reminded over and over again of the times when we fall short. The times when we do not live up to God's expectations. The times when we do not live up to our own expectations of justice, mercy, or humility. And so I invite you to join with me in our prayer of brokenness. And as you pray, hold in your heart those times when you did not quite live up to the expectations set before you. God, you are so generous,
Providing abundance, enough for all. Yet it is so for us to stop that we do not have enough. Worse, we can be resentful of your generosity to others. Help us partner with you in the vineyards of our communities to ensure our elected officials are committed to the flourishing of all your people. And God, when our resentment deteriorates into vengeful anger at those we believe is punishment, when we other those who disagree with us, help us to be better to know God. Transform that anger into the energy to share the stories of your love and justice throughout the generations. Help us carry that prophetic voice all the way to the voting booth. Thank you for calling us to share your generous love. May we meet your call without fear. Amen.
The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. When we act in ways that separate us from the love of God, God welcomes us back onto the path that follows Jesus' way.
Thanks be to God.
Our Old Testament today comes from Exodus 16, verses 2 through 15. The whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, where we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I am going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. In that way I will test them, whether they will follow my instruction or not. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard you complaining against the Lord. For what are we that you complain against us?" And Moses said, "When the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and your fill of bread in the morning, because the Lord has heard the complaint that you utter against him, what are we? Your complaint is not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, 'Draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaint.'" And as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the Israelites, they looked toward the wilderness, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. The Lord spoke to Moses and said, "I have heard the complaining of the Israelites. Say to them, 'At twilight you shall eat meat,
and in the morning you shall have your fill of bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God. In the evening quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat."
Sometimes it's moments of brokenness which create the greatest transformations. Times where fear gives birth to faith, pain leads to healing, and chaos dissolves into peace. It's in these times we often see God more clearly. For in our deepest turmoil, He remains faithful. When our spirit is crushed, He remains strong. When our moment is too heavy, He carries the burden. As gold is refined by fire, we too are often refined by struggle. It's part of growing, changing, becoming. Lately, the journey has been difficult. Our breath has been labored. Our steps uneasy. But we stand in faith, knowing who is leading us through this desert. The God of peace, the God of hope, the God of restoration.
Hear now our gospel reading. When Jesus entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him as he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these things, and who gave you this authority?" Jesus said to them, "I will also ask you one question. If you tell me the answer, then I will also tell you by what authority I do these things. Did the baptism of John come from heaven, or was it of human origin?" And they argued with one another, "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, 'Well, why then did you not believe him?' But if we say of human origin, we are afraid of the crowd, for all regard John as a prophet." So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. What do you think? A man had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, 'Son, go to work in the vineyard today.' And he answered, 'I will not.' But later he changed his mind and went. The father went to the second and said the same, and he answered, 'I will go, sir.' But he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of the Father?" And they said, "The first." And Jesus said to them, "Truly I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him, and even after you saw it, you did not change your minds and believe him." This is the gospel of Christ. Let us pray. O holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable and good to you, who are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. And so I forgot to mention something. Did you realize I've been with you now for exactly a year? And my 1 year has been not exactly going the way many of us thought it would or planned, including Bandit, who is not participating in the process. Today we hear some tough words from Jesus, and I'm just as glad I didn't have to preach on this on my first Sunday with you, because he's hitting hard as those religious leaders come to him, look him in the eye, and say, by whose authority are you doing these things? People have been asking this question from the beginning of time. Who gives you the right to say these things and to do these things? You are doing this the way we want you to do it, and who says you can do it this way anyway? From Noah to Isaiah, from Moses to Jesus, and then throughout history. Some doubted who gave them the authority to act, and others just chose not to listen. Sometimes it's very hard to discern where any one person finds their authority. We live in an age where the louder people talk, the more likely we are to listen to them. Especially if they say the most outrageous things. People can say anything they want on radio, on TV. They can blog anything they want on the internet. And face it, most of us spend most of our time at home, so that's about the only place where we get any of our information anyway. And if we say it with enough authority, we say it like we really believe it, then people will believe us. Even if we have nothing to back ourselves up. Politics, scientific discoveries, religious beliefs, it all gets mixed up together, and sometimes it's hard to know who to listen to. And right now it seems like that it's even harder than ever. Am I right? Our involvement in the Iraqi war was based on false claims. We know that now, almost 20 years later. And that misguided belief that we would be welcomed as saviors, that never happened. We're still dealing with the fallout almost 20 years later. And we still have troops throughout the Middle East because of that decision, based on faulty information. When we follow the wrong path, sometimes it takes generations to clean up the mess that's left behind. Just ask the ancient Israelites. They understood the repercussions of dealing with that fallout. They stayed in that wilderness for 40 years. Some of them died there. Some of them were born there and had no memory of the land that they had escaped from. And after years of slavery and hardship, Moses, who came to them, claimed that he got their authority directly from the God of their ancestors. A God, by the way, that they had all forgotten. When times were good, like when they're crossing through the Red Sea and everybody else is drowning, then they had no reason to doubt where he got his authority. But when times were bad, then it was a lot harder to trust him. And the truth is, there were very few good times for the Israelites, and there were lots of bad times. There were lots of really scary times. There were lots of times for them to doubt and distrust. And when that happened, they would start to mutter and grumble, just like the Pharisees would do so many generations later. And they would say things like, "By what authority are you doing these things? Who said you should drag us into this God-forsaken place?" And then the muttering got a little bit louder and a little bit louder, and pretty soon it went from muttering to complaining. And then they said, "Why did you take us out of the land where at least we were fed? We might have been slaves, but at least we weren't hungry. Why did you bring us here to die?" And just at the point when it seemed like the anger was going to take over, God shows them once again where Moses gets his authority. It's a gift that comes straight from God. From the plagues, to the parting waters, to manna from heaven. Over and over again, God shows those cranky Israelites that God is truly with them. That God is with them when they need God the most. And today's story reminds us how quickly they forget those gifts as soon as they are given to them. The manna is all fine and well, they say, so is that quail. We're really glad to have some food, thank you very much. But now we're thirsty. Give us water, they cry out. Why did you bring us out into this wilderness just to leave us to die? They cry out. And those of us sitting here, nicely masked in our chapel, think, how quickly they forget. Without those constant, miraculous reminders, the people forget that God chose them to lead them to freedom and to guide them toward the promised land. God made promises about where they would go. And God gave Moses not just the authority, but the ability to make it all happen. And they forgot it all. And they complained. And they doubt. And then once again they put God to the test. And they wonder, is God with us? Or is God against us? And of course, once again, God shows them that even though they are the crankiest people around, they are not alone, even in the wilderness. water flows. And the people are safe. Now, before we start feeling too self-righteous, we need to remember we put God to the same test today. And sometimes it feels like we're wandering through our own wilderness, and it's hard to know if God is really with us on this long, hard journey. We put God to the test with all of the decisions we make, whether it's on whether or not to wear a mask, or how we support people or don't support them as they protest, how we feel about all of the different things that are happening in our country and our world. It feels as if things are spinning out of control right now. And in a lot of ways, they are spinning out of control. We live in times that, at least for us, are unprecedented. A worldwide pandemic, protests that are bubbling up not just in our country, but all over the world. And to add into that, we have an upcoming election that, you believe half of the news shows every sign of being very volatile and probably dividing people even more. Add into that, we already have a pretty toxic mix there. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. Add into that toxic mix all of the natural disasters, the wildfires that are consuming the West Coast,
Hurricane.
the hurricanes that are tearing apart the East Coast, and we haven't even had tornadoes yet, and probably are going to have them go right through the middle of it. Unemployment and poverty rates are record highs, and there really doesn't seem to be an end in sight. Somebody said to me, my daughter's boyfriend said to me, I wonder what the season finale for 2020 is going to look like.
I don't want to see.
Well, I don't think I want to see that one. That episode I can skip. The fact is there are too many people who are struggling every day for basic food and water, and that promise of manna and water flowing out of rocks seems like a distant story. And it's not just in faraway countries, it's right here in our own neighborhood, which is why I'm so glad we're able to start Food Kitchen back up. So is it any wonder that we live in a time when so many of our own brothers and sisters sound like those ancient Israelites as they walk through the streets and into Walmart, grumbling and quarreling and saying to whoever will listen, why do we have to live with this? Oh God, why are you letting this happen? Why did you drag us into the wilderness only to leave us here to die? More than 200,000 people dead of COVID this weekend. But the truth is, and this is so important for us to remember, my beloved friends, my brothers and sisters here in Zion. The truth is, God has not left us stranded. God is with us every step of the way. even if we're trying to figure out how to teach them through virtual learning. God is with us as we grieve the loss of too many lives. God is with us when we follow the wrong leaders in the wrong direction, and God is with us when we reap the consequences. And God is with us as we try to figure out who the right leaders may be. God is with us when we quarrel. God is with us when we judge one another. God is with us when we are at the lowest points of our lives, feeling broken and alone. And then God is with us when we slowly stand back up and try again. And how do we know that God is with us? We know it in the same way that those ancient Israelites who couldn't even imagine it. We know something that they didn't know. We know that God is with us because God already showed us in the most dramatic way possible. More dramatic than mine, more dramatic than water flowing out of a rock. God showed us through Jesus Christ.
Amen.
The one who came to us, bearing with him that God-given gift of sacred authority. That, my friends, my beloved, is how we know that God is with us every step of the way. Today's lesson reminds us that God's economy, God's kingdom, that beloved community, it functions in a different way than the world we know. In God's fields, there's more than enough to go around. Nobody goes hungry and nobody is thirsty. We are left with baskets overflowing with abundance. In God's fields, we are called to be co-creators, working with God to build up that society where even those who have been pushed aside or labeled as undeserving are pulled back in, are fed, are cared for, and most important of all, are loved. We, my friends, are the ones who are called to create a more just world that provides for everyone, where no one is left behind, where the needs are met, and where everyone lives out their lives in dignity. We are the ones who God is calling. So it's time for us to stop quarreling and to stop backbiting and to stop struggling over what resources we have and to look beyond our fears. Jesus is waiting to help us rise out of our despair. The things we need to do as we emerge out of the wilderness are clear, because he's already told us what we need to know. That we need to love our neighbors, and love our enemies too. Because our neighbors and our enemies are the same. That we need to go and feed his sheep. Because when we do all of these things and when we do it under the authority of Jesus, we are doing it under the authority of God. And when we do all of these things and so much more, we will hear that voice in the wilderness and it will remind us, whenever you do these things, for the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you have done them already for me. Amen.
Amen.
Grace and peace of Christ be with you. My name is Ryan Sermons. I'm pastor of the United Church of Christ at Annapolis. We may all claim a desire for a just economy, but our goals for economic justice are held in check by our fears of scarcity. Economic injustice is rooted in what Walter Brueggemann called the myth of scarcity. Our job is to break through that myth to reveal God's abundance. This is not an easy job. Those who hold the levers of power are invested in maintaining that myth. The most effective way to break through that myth is to organize the economic power of our households and communities. Jesus demonstrated how to do this when he instructed the disciples to feed 10,000 people in the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 6, verses 30 to 44. The disciples were paralyzed. They couldn't begin to think where to get enough food, having brought with them a few loaves of bread and fish for their own consumption. Jesus directed the anxious disciples to organize people into groups of 50 to 100. By doing this, an amorphous crowd became groupings of communities. It's easy to anonymously eat a snack in a crowd and not worry about people around you. It's far more difficult to not share when you have to look your neighbors in the face. As people became part of organized communities, food was not only found miraculously in their midst, but so much there were leftovers. Miracle was a triumph of ever-present abundance over the myth of scarcity. Economic justice is fundamentally about power. For power to be effective, it must be organized. As with the community organizer before me, I define power simply as organized people and organized money. Our churches represent a body of organized people with organized money. Check your church budget if you don't believe that. Each household is also a body of organized people with organized money. Therefore, each church and household has a certain amount of power. How we use that power is a reflection of our values. Robert Conley, a veteran organizer and stewardship fundraiser, makes this clear when he says, if you want to know what you really believe, look at your checkbook or credit card statement and see what you spend your money on. What are steps you and your church, community, and household can organize to not only veil the myth of scarcity, but also recognize abundance? How do you be a better organized community that recognizes one another? How do you make sure your economic power, your credit card statement, your checkbook, and that of your church reflects your values? I assure you, it is not easy.
together as we pray to dedicate their skill. We give thanks to God that we
That we have the
have
opportunity to act on our faith by voting, by helping others vote. Guide us to use our vote, not just for furthering our own self-interest, but to make sure that those who are most in need of a just government and care of the community are the ones our leaders will respond to. Take our hands and feet and use them to create the beloved community of love and compassion.
So as we prepare to move forward, and as we prepare to join our voices together in prayer, I ask that you hold in your heart our new babies, but also all those on our prayer list to continue to be in need of a strong healing spirit, and also for the family of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and all of our leaders as they try to figure out how to move forward so that we do have a better and more just world. So let us join our voices together in the Lord's Prayer.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Go out this day, and may you do justice, show mercy, and always walk humbly with God. Amen.
Amen. Oh, what is today?